would love to talk more about initiation rituals and that transition, but let me just make this quick comment because we see these in cultures throughout the world where there's a very pronounced shift from childhood to adulthood, and it's usually through some sort of trauma or experience or quest that transitions you from childhood to adulthood. And be thinking about it. Do we have anything like that in American culture in the early part of the 21st century? Or are we just in this like prolonged adolescent, almost like dusk, right? It's not really childhood and it's not really adulthood, but we're in this weird kind of limbo adolescence that for some people can last 10, maybe 20 years. And that's really shocking. In these cultures where you have a clear set definition, you are prepared for that your whole life. You see that as this ultimate moment where you're going to leave the past behind and then enter into adulthood. And I think not having that in our culture is kind of a detriment in a way because it leaves our young people in limbo. So talk to me a little bit as a class. What would be the closest things you could think of in American culture when you feel like you'll be treated like an adult man or woman? And a lot of you are in your late teens or early 20s right now. Do you feel like an adult men or women? Or do you feel like you're still being treated like a child? Or sometimes people expect you to act like an adult, but then they give you the privileges of a child. And that's frustrating too, right? If you want me to act like an adult, treat me like an adult. If you want to treat me like a child, then let me have the freedom of a child and not the responsibilities of an adult. So anyone have any thoughts on when you get considered an adult in American society? Now, I understand legally at 18, you're considered an adult and in courts of law and things in our culture, but there's no ritual, there's no transition. It's just a passing of the years. So what I'm looking at, is there some sort of event or thing you can do in your life where people will see you as an adult?
I was thinking like moving out of your parents' house, and or getting married. Either of
Yes,
those.
that's so weird. So many people are not treated as adults in our culture until they actually marry. And then for the first time, the day before they got married, they're a child, and the day after, they're considered an adult. But you're right, Kendall. That's how, when my dad started to treat me like an adult, was when I moved out and started to support myself. And after I had done that for a couple years, I noticed our relationship changed. He stopped trying to micromanage me and tell me to do all these, but he was more just like, he was still supportive, but now it was supportive as me as an independent householder, an independent man. Even though I was still young, I wasn't dependent upon him for my survival anymore. How about for women? I know for some people, men and women, when they went off to join the military, um, and I know the military, a lot of people talk about how that grew them up, how it made a man or woman out of them. And because think of the responsibilities, think of the rigor, think of the expectations put upon you. So that's another way I've noticed people in our culture achieve adulthood is through military service or service of some other kind. Talk to me, the women, because since I'm not a woman, I don't know.
I was gonna say, I mean, I think for women, it's maybe when they move out on their own and no longer like, I see it as like when a daughter no longer goes to her father for problems that she can either A, do.
Right, thanks, Kaylee. I mean, I can
Okay,
see. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. It's so Kaylee, but I'm on Autumn's thing. My thing keeps logging me out. But basically just like when either A, a girl does stuff on her own, or B, moves out.
Yes, yes. And
Or also like
I
when
think the biological of of the woman having her first menstrual cycle, that's also huge, just because of the implications of it. I think it has a lot more significance than like the first time a man is able to ejaculate or has a nocturnal emission or something like that. There seems to be something profoundly associated with womanhood and the ability to bear children. And a lot of cultures make a really, really big deal out of that.
I wouldn't say that like it would be when a woman first has her first menstrual cycle is when she's considered a woman, because that can happen at the age of 9, and obviously you're not a woman when you're 9.
In these tribal cultures, you are.
Yeah, but in our society, if that
No,
were to happen,
you're not. Right. So you're right. In our culture, that's probably not enough to get you full womanhood status, even though you've definitely had a profound change taking place, I'm sure biologically and emotionally. Anyone else want to talk into that?
Yeah, I would say also going to college is a big thing. I know that was
Sure.
kind of where my mind shifted, and you know, the way my parents treated me shifted as well. As well as I do think having like your own car, you know, having a license and then having your own mobility is just like a really natural kind of and adulthood.
Do you see how it's so interesting, just kind of stepping back and listening not only to my examples, but some of the classmates' examples? Almost all these American adulthood examples have to do with achieving a certain level of independence. And in a tribal culture, that's not even part of the mindset, because you're so interconnected with the other people of the tribe and the group. And so this is what I'm telling you about this class. What's so great, as we look at other cultures, if you allow yourself to use them as a mirror to look back at yourself, you can get really great insights about the way we've been brought up, the way we think that we don't even think about, because it's just such a natural part of being brought up as an American. And anyways, good participation. I really appreciated that.
Ooh, also one more is like in our society, whenever you turn 21, it's like you're kind of seen as
when you turn legal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, or 25 when you can legally rent a car.
Yeah, it's so weird, right? We have these different stages, and once again, those are largely have to do with either law or liability and responsibility, because we have associated, and we've even used the scientific method, right? Insurance companies crunch data to determine rates, and they have determined under a certain age, especially for males, they don't want to rent you a car. It's just the chances of something bad happening are too great. It's not worth the money they would have made in renting 25 and under males' cars. And even insurance rates, I believe, are different for men and women. That's one place in our society where women, I think, have an advantage based on gender, as opposed to males. And once again, it's using data to try to predict behaviors, and that's part of how our society rolls. And so it's economic, it has to do with liability and risk taking. All right.